us. It's simply whether or not it meets all the technical merits. I believe that it does now, and hopefully council can support this moving forward to council to have a more wholesome debate around the motion itself. So here it is. I'm introducing it.
Thank you. I'll go over to Councillor Warnes.
Thanks. I'm trying to figure out if I'm debating this or not, but when it comes to an applicant, do they just have to submit the applicant to be grandfathered in, or do they have to have the approval with this updated? And it's really hard because you're putting an alternative, and it's I'm walking that fine line.
Mayor, to Councillor Warnes. So should I maybe just go through the 3 areas that are being exempted again a little bit slower?
No, it's just a timing because it says like, no, it's just a timing because it says like if someone's going to get grandfathered through and say now we're talking about it, it's in the press, and someone wants to maintain RCG, what happens if they submit an application and then between now and when council votes on it, will they be grandfathered through or not?
Yes, so what B says is this amending bylaw would exempt parcels of land that are included in an application or permit submitted prior to first reading of the amending bylaw. So what we would do and what we're proposing, council, is we would have public hearing and first reading of the bylaw in March. And then we would bring back an updated amending bylaw the following month for second and third reading. That updated amending bylaw would exempt out any additional parcels that came in between the time our report was written and the bylaw drafted and that first council giving first reading.
Okay, so if anyone wants to keep it, they should start applying now, is what you're saying. Thank
Correct.
you.
Thank you, Councillor. Moving over to Councillor Pantzopoulos.
Thank you so much. Back to you, GM Hamilton. Just guidance provided before about timelines and being, commentary about non-achievable, and just moving it 1 month. There was discussion 9 to 12 months, public hearing, and maybe reconcile that back for me, that moving something forward 1 month addresses all those timelines and concerns. And if you could just sort of speak to that, what 30 days does. Thank you. Just think more of clarification to understand the back to that technical merits about the ability to actually execute on the timeline. But
thank you, colleagues. I'm going to allow just a little bit more leeway for this one, given that it's our very first vetting on a technical basis at our executive committee, and especially given the complexity of this notice of motion. But again, I'm going to try to keep it tight. But if GM Hamilton, if you don't mind weighing in on that.
Thank you, Council. So the original version had us reporting back to Council after going through Infrastructure and Planning Committee for February 17th. When we date that back to committee and then when our report is due, the report was due January 7th for IPC in January. That gave us 13 business days between the time Council debates and potentially approves this motion on December 15th to the January 7th deadline. That's in and around Christmas. That's time to, too few days to get the work done that previously we did in 6 months. So appreciating that council wishes to move forward in a timely manner with this, not asking for 6 months, but a couple things here. This is where if we change the date to come for public hearing and first reading in March, direct to council, that means we don't go to committee. That saves us some time there. It gives us more time to proceed with an electronic notification bylaw. That bylaw is a charter bylaw and needs to be advertised for 60 days. What that does is it will give us belts and braces. We will do our legal notifications to all affected landowners, but the electronic notification bylaw gives us the ability, should council approve that we can also use that mechanism to notify folks. We're also dealing with a potential Canada Post strike that gives us uncertainty too when we're mailing out letters. So with those two factors in play, this does give us a little bit more time. We're still trying to honor the request to go as quickly as possible.
Thank you. Any other requests to speak? Councillor Yule?
So just a technical question. Is this considered a reconsideration vote? Will it or this is just a majority vote?
Madam Clerk?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Yule. Because this is a bylaw, reconsiderations don't apply. We're not going to be following the rules within the procedure bylaw. When it comes to a City of Calgary bylaw, it's the Municipal Government Act that overrides it, so there is no reconsideration.
Okay, thanks.
And Ms. Hamilton, to jump back in.
Yes, sorry, Council. I forgot one key component. In 2023, 2024, we did extensive public engagement. My understanding with the movers on this is public engagement, traditional public engagement is not being required, and maybe Councillor Schubel, if I can ask you to confirm that for me. But this additional time does give us time to do communication and informing Calgarians of what is coming.
Councillor Schmidt.
Thank you. Yes, and I'll, with the extra leeway, I'll still try to walk a fine line here between debate and technical questions. But on the legal basis, we do have some safety mechanisms in place to decrease our potential liability. Perhaps for Ms. Flowen, I'll word this carefully, but with a regressive type of bylaw amendment like this, have we bolstered this enough to protect ourselves once this is live and moving on from this setting into the regular meeting of council and then a public hearing, when we're essentially removing property rights from such a massive scale of Calgarians?
Councillor, I'm going to have to hold you there. It's the legal considerations right now are whether council can do this, right, not characterizations like regressive or step back. Those are characterizations for debate. Right now before us is just the technical merits.
So then I suppose I'll reframe that on the technical merits. Have we created this in such a way that legally, I mean, given the Nose Hill decision did somewhat set a precedent for this, have we built this notice of motion in such a way that we would follow previous, say, Supreme Court decisions or within the MGA or other Alberta decisions to do this correctly?
So through the chair, council absolutely has the jurisdiction to amend the land use bylaw, which is what this notice of motion proposes. It is absolutely necessary that council follows all of the requirements of the law, including providing notice and holding a public hearing. And as is the case with any council decision, there's always a risk that a decision could be challenged, and we can never predict with 100% certainty what a court will do. But that being said, what is being proposed here is defensible, and I'm just reminding council that it is always important and necessary to be amenable to persuasion and have an open mind, such that your mind is not unalterably made up, which of course is the purpose of the public hearing, listening from the public and making your decision after hearing from the public.
And then again, walking a fine line, if I can, with a few of the wordings, sort of the unequivocal wording in the notice of motion with a term, I'll use an example of Calgarians have been cut out of having a direct say on redevelopment. Is that technically correct, given that so many of the uses within here are discretionary, which still allows for input into this process? So I just wanted some clarification as far as an unequivocal statement like that.
We're getting into debate, but what I will try to challenge or channel that question in a more constructive way is maybe a more general question to the clerk. The whereas preambles for each of these notices of motion, typically when executive committee were to give the thumbs up or thumbs down, it's not an endorsement in terms of the words that the author has put on the page, nor is it a representation of an official position of the City of Calgary. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mayor Farkas. When it comes to the executive committee, the motion that the committee will be voting are the further it be resolved clauses to forward the notice of motion onto council, not the whereas clauses, no.
And just as a follow-up, if council were to adopt the resolutions within this notice of motion, the whereas is not part of the resolution, is that correct?
That's correct. If I can just maybe look to my legislative specialist there to put the other motion so you can see what you will be voting on. It is simply to forward the revised notice of motion onto council. So the statements fall off the motion that's being voted on, and that will not form part of the vote.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. And then I suppose one final clarification, I'll word this one more generally, is that when we look at city policies such as the public engagement policy and others such as the housing strategy, Home is Here, the municipal development plan, are we at this stage looking at the compliance of that key part of the notice of motion with existing policies, or would that be something that we will bring to debate as part of a regular council meeting?
I'll take that one as chair. My understanding is that that's the purpose of the notice of motion checklist, is some of those other considerations. The author of the notice of motion undertakes some of those questions, and then I'm sure that the mover here will have taken under advisement some of the questions from his colleagues in order to address perhaps by virtue of amendments or further debate on the council floor.
And I thank the chair for guiding me through that process.
Yeah, no worries. And just as chair, I just want to give a bit more of an explanation of why I'm giving more latitude here. It's if, for example, it was the same text that was provided on our agenda and the same text that we were considering, then there would be less leeway for this. But given that it's new text being revisited or just being introduced on the floor, I think it's very appropriate for us as members to be able to have administration on hand to answer questions specific to those changes. It's an opportunity we didn't have over the last week or when the agenda was published. Moving now to Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. Realizing that I'm also totally in something new here, please guide me through. But I wondered if I could possibly ask some questions around maybe the technical and legal ramifications to the Housing Accelerator funding and the pardon me?
Yeah, I'll Councillor Clark, maybe if you don't mind allowing me to ask a question on your behalf to Ms. Hamilton, is that I had received comments and questions from other council colleagues over the weekend, specifically on the financial considerations. But Ms. Hamilton, if you could speak to why land use decisions are separate from any other financial considerations, just in terms of the specifics of the use.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Planning matters do not take into financial considerations. So I'll remind all of council members, the little cheat sheet I handed out to you during onboarding lists the types of planning matters that you want to take into consideration during land use, and financial matters or the Housing Accelerator Fund are not one of those.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm not sure that many of my questions then apply to today's meeting and this new notice of motion, so I will cease. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Atkinson.
I'm just curious, Jim Hamilton, if you can speak to how this affects planning within the planning department, just like things that this will potentially have to push off or...
Unfortunately, that's not the type of question we're permitted within the scope for executive committee, this type of vetting. It's more in terms of whether this is the type of question you're asking with respect, Councillor, is more in terms of the lines of this is a good thing or a bad thing, what are the implications? Whereas, unfortunately, in terms of our procedure bylaw, we're very tight for the purposes of this meeting in terms of whether it's legally possible versus whether it's a good idea or the public benefit, risks, benefits, trade-offs, pros and cons.
corporate planning?
One thing I would suggest, though, is in advance of any debate or discussion on any type of notice of motion or any agenda item, I would encourage all of my colleagues to reach out to administration prior to that with those types of questions to better inform your potential for debate or amendments on the actual floor of council when we're debating sort of the pros and the cons.
All right.
You still have the floor, though. Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kelly?
First, just a procedural question. Is this an amendment or So I'm looking at clerks for just some clarification in terms of having been the very first committee meeting that most of us have participated in, and I'm not sure the differences between here and the council meeting. So just some insight, please.
Take us away.
Thank you. Through the chair, that is an excellent question. No, this is not an amendment. Councillor Chabot, when he moved the notice of motion, he moved the revised version. So we've simply taken the original that is in the agenda, and he's moved a revised one, which is the text that you see that is on the screen. So no amendments have been made. This allows us to then place this revised copy in its entirety on your council agenda for December 15th.
And how much sort of leeway do we normally have in terms of editing the notices of motion to the table? I'm just aware that we had like 7 days to take a look at what's here, and what we're looking at today has some significant changes that I would have appreciated those, you know, some of those days to be able to review those changes rather than the minutes that we've had here.
Madam Clerk?
Sure, thank you, through the chair. So the procedure bylaw does not set out in terms of how you go about editing, but what the procedure bylaw does set out, it's very clear that the role of the executive committee is really about that technical review, which includes the financials, resource capacity, legal implications, technical contact, procedural matters, and any urgency rationale. And then the decision for committee today is whether this will forward onto council or whether it will be returned back to the member who brought it forward with instructions. So there's no provisions in terms of any edits, whether it's the whereas clauses, and the only motion being voted on is to forward it or not.
No, I understand. Thank you. Just, I guess, the question, I think Councillor Panozopoulos asked it in the chat. Is it possible to get a red line copy of this so we can see exactly what the changes are from what we were given previously to what we're looking at now?
That would typically be for the mover, and I would hope that Councillor Chabot would provide that in advance.
Guess we're a little late to get a copy of that, though, at this point. Okay. Question then, just, not sure if it's an appropriate one within the context of this particular committee, but I'm looking at the 6th whereas article, or at least it was the 6th. I don't know if it still is. I'm just sort of curious in terms of getting a little bit more information in terms of, because these are forming the basis for the motion. I'm just wondering if we can get a little bit more background information in terms of these. Like, for example, it says it's failed to deliver greater housing affordability. I'm just curious where that, the data that's sourcing that statement.
That'll be a question for debate where the mover and seconder will typically make the case, and certain questions can be asked for them at that point, which they'll be able to answer in their close. But just cordially, I think just speaking to us as colleagues, a lot of these questions I think should be asked well prior to the council floor so that matters
Absolutely.
and items that are brought forward achieve as great a possible as consensus for this body.
That's great. Thank you.
So I'm adding myself into the queue, seeing no other lights. If we could please just put up Madam Clerk, the notice of motion checklist that came with this item.
It'll just take us one moment to get there. There you go.
So this is a question I typically will ask of every single notice of motion, but it's to administration, to GM Hamilton, or perhaps Ms. Flown. Is there any pertinent or material information that you believe should be on this checklist forwarded to members of council? The reason that I ask this, colleagues, is that the checklist is not independently verified or produced by city administration. It's just the representation of the authors, and I'd like this opportunity for both Ms. Hamilton and Ms. Flown to speak to this checklist if there's any pertinent information that our city administration feels should be on here when it comes to financial, resourcing, legal, technical content, procedural, or any other considerations.
Thank you, Mayor. The one item that we haven't discussed is resources and any budget to undertake this work. I don't have numbers in front of me. The team's been working on it, and I will then also apologize through to Councillor Kelly and actually to Councillor Chabot, because we've been working on it. These last minute changes are coming from us for further clarity on the direction. So This morning, yes, at 8 a.m. with Councillor Chabot. So I apologize to all of council for the last minute. Mayor, I believe just from a resourcing perspective, this will require me to redirect staff from certain core work that we're doing now onto this notice of motion and undertake this work, as well as potentially budget. There may be core work that needs to stop. There may be applications that will not get processed or will slow down in order for me to get the team working on this piece of work. And I just don't have that fully quantified in my head right now.
Thank you. And Ms. Sloan, did you want to speak to this?
Thank you. I don't really have more to add at this time. We'll have more information that we can provide during the more fulsome debate at council.
Thank you. That's it for me. And going finally over to Councillor Johnston and then Councillor Chabot to close.
Sorry, this is directed to administration. Do you have the total amount for the last amendment for this bylaw, for how much it costs us?
Through the mayor to Councillor Johnson, yes. We were asked to report on that, specifically with regards to cost to prepare the public hearing and costs of the public hearing. And so that is in report. I'm going to say the number so that everyone can go there, but then I'll tell you the dollar amount. So that is in report EC 2024-0692. Cost to prepare the public hearing was $945,000. And cost for the public hearing itself was $330,000 for a total of $1.275. That doesn't include, you know, systems work and that kind of thing. That was mainly focused on the public hearing itself.
Thank you. Seeing no other lights, I will go to Councillor Chabot to close.
Yeah, so council committee, actually, members, obviously this is a complex issue, and I've asked administration to walk, chew bubble gum and text all at the same time. Of course, there was an election that came in between there, and so it's kind of hard to cover all the bases all at once. Obviously, there's going to be some resource requirements associated with it. Internal resource requirements from my perspective. I don't see us having to hire externally or additional resources to accomplish this. Yes, it will affect workflow. That is something that council will have to debate at the time when this gets before council. At this point, I don't want to get too much into the operative clauses of this, and the whereases, again, can be somewhat subjective from the mover's perspective, without getting into the technical merits of the whereases and or the operative clauses. Happy to have those debates on council floor, as well as any other potential changes that you might want to propose. Of course, we have to remain amenable to persuasion, and so I'm introducing the motion, but looking forward to a very robust and wholesome conversation when this does get onto council floor. I hope you can support this motion so we can have those wholesome discussions and address something that's been quite evident over the last several months that I've certainly heard lots of, and I'm sure you all did during the public hearing or during the extensive engagement that just happened, which is called the election 2025. Closed.
Thank you, Councillor. Madam Vote, or Madam Clerk, let's please engage the e-vote. I'm going to eventually string together the words in the right order.
Councillor Chabot, your vote, please. Thank you. Councillor Johnston, your vote, please. Thank you. Mayor Farkas, all the votes are in.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Please display the results. The motion is carried 13-2 with Councillors Atkinson and Schmidt opposed. Thank you, Madam Clerk. I will now look to Councillor Dhaliwal to introduce 5.2.2.
Thank you, Mayor. That was the longest technical review I've ever seen of NOM. So hopefully we can keep it very brief. This is a very straightforward revision. On my NOM, Mayor Farkas had reached out to our team. He would like to sign on to this NOM, so that's exactly what we are doing. So the new revised NOM is with the clerks. So with that, hopefully, yeah, we can just move to the vote and get it onto the council floor for 15th of December. Thank you.
All right, the item protecting Calgary's neighborhoods, strengthening fireworks enforcement and awareness. The item's been moved. Are there any requests to speak to this item? Going once, twice, seeing none. Over to you, Councillor Dhaliwal, to close, and thank you as well for allowing me to join.
Great, no fireworks. I'm close.
Madam Clerk, let's please engage the e-vote.
Councillor Chabot, your vote, please.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Johnston, your vote, please.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Farkas, all the votes are in.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Please display the results. And the motion is carried 15-0 unanimously. Thank you. And now that we've done item 7.1, consent agenda items selected for debate, we can now move to item 7.2, the city's quarterly report 2025. We'll give a moment just for Mr. Duckworth to approach the podium.
Good morning, Mayor, Council, Executive Committee. Mr. Tucker and I are pleased to be here with you this morning to share the highlights from the City of Calgary's quarterly report. This report covers the second and third quarters of 2025 and demonstrates the progress that we've been making on priorities that matter most to Calgarians. And for many of you, this report will be new, so let me just take a moment to provide a little bit of context. So each quarter, myself and my team will be coming to you. We'll provide an overview of our progress in implementing Council's directives and addressing the community's priorities. The report highlights key achievements, milestones, and challenges, as well as performance metrics to show how we are meeting intended outcomes. We use a variety of information and data to develop the quarterly report, one of which is the results from our biannual surveys of Calgarians. Last week, we had the opportunity to share the results of our 2025 fall survey with you. We also provided you with a preview of the upcoming budget deliberations set for next week. The survey findings, along with our investment recommendations for budget, reflect what Calgarians are telling us what matters most to them, and that is housing, public safety, transit, and infrastructure. Our focus remains on these four key priorities while balancing affordability. This quarter's report also includes new information aimed at improving financial transparency. This includes a financial and economic update to give you and Calgarians insight into our investments, as well as the macroeconomic trends shaping our environment. This report reflects our commitment to you and to Calgarians to open, transparent, and accountable reporting and communication. Next slide, please. So committee, today's recommendation is simply that you receive this report and presentation for the corporate record. Next slide, please. So I want to start by highlighting some of the key accomplishments from the last two quarters. One standout result is the growing satisfaction Calgarians feel with the public services that they receive. According to the fall 2025 survey, 67% of residents reported being satisfied with the overall quality and level of city services and programs. This is a 6% increase from spring of 2025 and a 4-point rise from last fall. This is further underscored by the performance of our 311 service, which remains strong throughout the past two quarters, with 86% of calls answered in less than 60 seconds, more than double our performance from this time last year. As a vital link between Calgarians and municipal services, 311 helps ensure timely access and responsiveness across the city. Together, these results reflect resident confidence in how the city delivers services and makes decisions. We are committed to operational and service excellence, and we can see that Calgarians feel their city is increasingly responsive, effective, and trustworthy. Calgary is quickly approaching 2 million people. While that growth brings opportunity, it also increases pressure on our existing infrastructure and services. While making strategic investments to meet today's needs and prepare for future demand, I'll speak to more about this shortly, but first, here are a few other encouraging results from the past 2 quarters. First, on housing. From April to September, once again, Calgary led the nation in housing starts. In the second and third quarters, we issued more than 12,000 housing development permits. As housing costs and rental prices began to ease, we're seeing early signs that the Home is Here strategy is making an impact, though there's still much work ahead to improve affordability. Second, on safety. Despite rising demand and increasingly complex challenges, 75% of Calgarians believe the city is a safe place. This reflects key investments in emergency management and the implementation of recommendations from the Downtown Safety Leadership Table. And finally, on transit. This year, we opened a new fare entry site in Shaughnessy, making it easier for Calgarians in the south to access services. As affordability continues to be a challenge for many in our city, this pilot project is critical to ensure that every person, especially those most in need of support, can connect with the services that they need with respect and dignity. Next slide, please. One of the most encouraging stories from this year is our progress on housing. While nearly every city in Canada is grappling with the pressures of growth and affordability, Calgary is showing what's possible. Through our Home is Here strategy, we are delivering tangible results to address this issue. And between April and September, again, we outpaced other major cities in building new homes. Over 12,000 development permits were issued and more than 12,600 homes were completed and available for occupancy, a 20% jump from last year. We've also surpassed our commitment to the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation's Housing Accelerator Fund by 104% in just 20 months, helping unlock more than 44,000 homes for more than 100,000 Calgarians. To support this momentum, we've launched 3 funding streams totaling nearly $70 million to help our partners build faster and smarter. One initiative I want to spotlight is our first ever for Indigenous by Indigenous funding program. With $30 million in support, it exceeded to deliver 150 to 350 homes designed through culturally grounded, community-led planning. We're also expanding non-market housing with projects like Varsity Multi-Service Center, Liberty Housing's Borough Block, and Calgary's Housing's Mount Pleasant development moving ahead. And in the downtown core, 3 office-to-residential conversions, the Loft, Dominion Center, and Petrofina, are now complete or nearing completion. These projects are helping revitalize the area while adding more housing options. I'm proud of what we've accomplished. Every new home means more stability, safety, and opportunity for someone in our city. We've actioned 90% of our Home is Here housing strategy, but we know Calgarians want us to go further. Based on our fall survey results, 86% say more investment in affordable housing is needed. That's why we're staying focused on smart, forward-looking decisions to close the housing gap and keep pace with Calgary's rapid growth. Next slide, please. Public safety remains one of our top priorities, and as Calgary grows, so does the demand on emergency services and social programs. We are stepping up to meet those challenges, and Calgarians are taking notice. The fall 2025 survey results demonstrate that 75% of Calgarians said the city feels safe. This is 5 points higher than in the spring, a tremendous improvement in a short amount of time. While there have been improvements, we, along with our partners, continue to face ongoing challenges due to more complex and increased social needs. With more residents facing affordability challenges and vulnerabilities, the pressure on support systems continues to grow. That's evident in the surge in fare entry applications, which jumped 67% from the first quarter to the third quarter, from 13,400 to more than 22,400. To respond, We opened a new pilot site at South Fish Creek Recreation Association, renovated counters at the municipal building to reduce wait times, and added staff to speed up processing. Emergency response remains strong. In the third quarter, 91% of 911 calls were answered within the target time, and fire response times improved by 48 seconds compared to last year, thanks to targeted investments in staffing and equipment. We also updated 33,000 street and address records to help first responders reach people faster. At the same time, we've kept our focus on safety and social disorder. In 2025, Council invested $10 million to improve downtown safety by acting on the Downtown Safety Leadership Table's recommendations, which has helped stabilize incident calls throughout the year. We also expanded the Vulnerable Persons Team to respond to growing needs in residential and industrial areas. These teams pair peace officers with social service agencies to support people facing complex challenges. This integrated approach is helping us respond more effectively, ease pressure on emergency services, and improve outcomes for those who need support the most. Taken together, these results show that even with more people, complexity, and demand, we're prioritizing safety and making sure those who need support the most receive it. Next slide, please. So far in 2025, Calgary Transit has delivered nearly 79 million rides. And as Calgary grows, we're taking action to increase service and expand the transit network so that we can deliver fast, reliable, and safe transportation for all Calgarians. On the safety front, we've made meaningful progress for both riders and transit staff. This includes station audits, critical maintenance at LRT stops, installing physical barriers in buses, and advancing key actions from our public transit safety strategy. Through our Route Ahead strategy, we've identified important gaps in funding, service, and network coverage, gaps that limit time, frequent transit for many Calgarians. Thanks to a $3 million investment from our previous council, we've been able to hire and train additional staff to relieve the immediate pressures and start to close the gaps and address safety concerns. We're also modernizing and updating our fleet. This includes replacing aging access vehicles, community shuttles, and new light rail vehicles, along with installing mobile ticket validators on all LRT platforms. These upgrades help ensure our system stays safe and efficient and is ready to meet the growing demand. Next slide, please. Infrastructure continues to be top of mind for Calgarians. 39% ranked it as their leading concern in the recent fall survey. We're responding with smarter, more coordinated investments to extend the life of existing infrastructure and prepare for future needs. That means ensuring that our roads are in good repair. By the end of September, we fixed over 27,000 potholes, which led to a drop in 311 service requests by 54%. We also completed proactive maintenance to ensure that every sander truck we have was ready for action during the upcoming winter season. Beyond maintenance, we've upgraded major infrastructure across the city, including the Inglewood Sanitary Trunk, Mission Bridge rehabilitation, and Glenmore Park improvements, so Calgarians can rely on safe roads, clean water, and access to essential services when and where they need them. Quickly turning to parks. Next slide, please. I'm sorry. The next slide is actually over to Mr. Tucker. Mr. Tucker is now going to provide a quick update on our budget and economy. Mr. Tucker, over to you.
Great, thank you. So as we look to the financial portion of the quarterly report, in the document you received, this is essentially starting on page 11 of the quarterly report and going forward. Within this document, just to highlight that as of September 30th, the city had a favorable operating variance of $210 million, and this is primarily due to $151 million from our increased investment income, from higher interest income, and one-time realized gains from rebalancing our portfolio. We had $19 million for other corporate revenues, which are lower corporate contingencies required for unforeseen circumstances at this point in the year, and higher than anticipated revenues from tax fines and penalties. And then we had 40 million from variances across all departments, and mainly due to the timing of expenditures, scheduling of grant receipts, and lower salary and wages due to vacancies. From a year-end forecast perspective, we are forecasting a 210 million positive variance as well for our year-end forecast. The composition is slightly different than where we are right now. We have 165 million for higher investment income, 42 million in corporate contingency savings, 15 million increased revenue from property tax, tax fines and penalties, and 16 million savings in salary and wages due to vacancies. These are partially offset by 28 million, which is the unfavorable fine revenue projected for the Calgary Police Services. Next slide, please. Here in front of us, we have the capital spending, and this moves us along to page 14 if you're in the main report. As of September 30th, the city has spent approximately 1.5 billion, or 54% of the $2.7 billion capital budget, towards high-priority infrastructure projects that enhance safety and service reliability. During the third quarter of 2025, several major infrastructure milestones were completed across the city. This demonstrates the city's continued dedication to building stronger communities and improving everyday life for Calgarians. Construction is also underway and progressing steadily on key projects. Spend rates are expected to increase towards the end of the year due to the seasonality of the construction industry. In terms of our year-end forecast for capital, the city is forecasting a year-end spend rate of 91%. The capital spend rate increases significantly in the second half due to, as I mentioned, the seasonality, but also will continue to be positive as our weather holds. And there was a question that we had when we were speaking on Monday regarding the budget and how it comes together. The question was around the linkage between what we have for a forecast and what we have mentioned in the budget documents. And again, that'll be coming on the 24th. The crossover connection point is really when we look at the forecasted positive variance that I mentioned of 210 million, that represents itself on page 9 of the budget documents that we walked through. And that is the primary funding and driver of our capacity for one-time operating and capital. And that allows us to have move forward with a lot of the proposed adjustments that were mentioned on page 15. So that's just how those two reports come together. And with that, back over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Tucker. Committee, on behalf of our entire administration, thank you for the opportunity to serve Calgarians and make life better every day. The progress shared here today is the result of the dedication of every single city employee, as well as the leadership of council. This progress is reflective of the priorities that matter most to Calgarians. The research we shared last week and what we've shared today confirms that as well. As you enter budget deliberations next week, I encourage you to reflect on the insight within this report to help inform your difficult decisions. And I look forward to working with all of you as we continue our work to build and continue to build a world-class city. With that, I'd like to again ask the Executive Committee to recommend that Council receive this report and presentation for the corporate record. And next slide, we are open to any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Duckworth and Toker. Going over to Councillor Pentazopoulos.
A few questions. Excuse me. The 27,000 potholes that were filled, can we think about that with that expenditure as an annual basis, or was this a one-time expenditure just to sort of get caught up?
As you know, we're having some challenges with our paving quality, so that 27,000 and our target of 33,000 is an annual expenditure. As we've started to make some inroads into the paving overlay, we are seeing that start to decrease in 2025. So we're seeing the effect of some of the investments, and we hope we can start to tackle that over the next 5 years.
The investment, the 210 and the 150, that's realized, includes realized investment gains from a rebalancing. Is there any risk to that number, just given uncertainty in capital markets? Stock market could go up 10%, could go down, and how that would impact your go-forward forecast for positive variance?
So in terms of the investment income that we have included, those are realized gains. And those, from a confidence perspective, we're quite confident that that will hold at that level going through the year end.
Perfect. And then from a capital spend, a couple things. The 91%, the 9% that would not be spent, does that naturally carry over to 2026? If so, is that built into the budget?
Typically that, yeah, would roll over to 2026. It's not built into the 2026 capital budget. It would be an add-on unless there was projects that had come in under budget and we had money that we'd relinquish for future projects.
And then the 1.9 or so of capital spend relative to this budget, we're almost potentially advocating a double. What's the $3.9 billion budget in 2026? So maybe just speak to, sort of resourcing. Are we right-sized in 25 and there needs to be a substantial increase, or we got capacity today to anticipate and build that $3.9 billion spend going into 26?
Yeah, so thanks for the question. So resourcing is definitely a risk that we're tracking, both internally for our staff and externally for market contractors and consultants to do that work. We've really evaluated the program for 3.6 across the entire city and believe that we can achieve that, including an additional carryover from 25 to it. But we are bumping up against resource risks, and we have to make sure that we're thinking differently going forward as we continue to scale.
And Councillor Pantazopoulos, you will see in the proposed budget document, I believe Mr. Thompson in his department, there's a request for, I think it's more than 50 full-time equivalents to help address the capital needs.
So across the city, we've got additional requests in for delivery, because it's not just in infrastructure services, the $3.6 billion in the 26 budget. That's work going across my colleagues sitting at this table and the teams working with us.
Thank you. Just two more. I wanted to speak to that report amending the key performance measures. I think is fantastic. I think for Calgarians and for council, you get to see the historic trend is your friend. So I love that there's more metrics, and I'd love to add some thoughts about adding some, but it just gives a good context so you can understand where that grows. So thank you so much for including that. I think my last one is, nope, these are all for the upcoming budget discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Over to Councillor Dhaliwal.
Thank you, Mayor. My question is attachment 2, page 4, it says 311 customer, 723,000 into on-call support. 311 customer service performance. I just want to understand this. What does on-call support mean?
I'll have to look to my colleagues down the table here to answer that question.
And it says the KPI is 86% of the calls answered in 60 seconds or less. That. It's this one right here.
Sorry, Councillor. I believe that's just a reference to additional investment that was made in 311 to deal with the growing volume of calls that were there.
Okay, that's fine. And then my other question is, for 44,276 units to house over 100,000 Calgarians in the last 20 months, are those real affordable housing through non-market sector or overall units? Because 20 months goes back to when the blanket zoning came into effect.
It's an overall figure, both market and non-market.
Okay, great, thank you. My other question is, I want to go to attachment 2, page 10. We have all these KPIs here, again, transit, infrastructure. Transit, we are seeing trips that arrive within a specified time. Our target is 90% by end of next year. We are almost at 84 right now. Parks, assets in poor and very poor condition, 19%. Target is less than 22%. Properties impacted by water outage, target is less than 33. We are around, whatever, 7, 9. I just want to understand, how are we quantifying, like, where are we getting this data? Like, because often I ask the utilization rate and all that, and we don't have that data. I've always told, no, we don't have data. But here I see the data that is saying we're meeting all these targets.
Sure, great question. So we have a I would say, a plethora of operating data. So for example, on-time performance of transit, we track every bus with GPS, we match that to the schedule, and then we can report back on a route basis or on a system basis, as you see on-time performance. The same thing occurs with parks asset management. So we do regular inspections. We categorize at what state the assets are in, and then we are able to report back and inform some of our programming and decision-making on those metrics. If there are metrics you're curious about within the organization, we'll be happy to provide those to you, but we have quite a few. We have metrics on the state of the buses, so it's all there. Sometimes they're technical levels of service metrics, and sometimes they're more customer that we would report back to the customer.
Yeah, because transit is easy one, but I'm looking at parks and stuff because, and first of all, I don't want to go to granular stuff. What is poor and very poor? What does that mean? That's very subjective.
So what we have is a rating framework that we will look at, and it really is how can a customer experience that asset? So if it's a playground or if it's a park, what state is it in, and is it fit for the service that we're providing in that space? Some of them are subjective and less measurement heavy, but it would still be an assessment that we do. And again, that helps us when we're looking at allocating the funds we have or asking council for new investments.
Great, thank you. My second last question is more for understanding, again, attachment to page 13. It says June 3rd, 2025 Strategic Council meeting, a capital budget increase of 96 million that was partially funded through 25 million of the city's 2025 forecast positive variance. Can you explain me that? What does that exactly mean? Because we are saying, just clarification, that we are taking 96 million of 210 that is already committed, or because it says 25 million of the city's 2025 forecasted positive variance. Just want to understand, is it 210, 25? What it does not.
So the 210 is our overall variance, and we were earlier in this year, there was a proposal to utilize 25 million of what was forecasted partway through the year to be utilized going forward. When we started building out the budget documents in terms of what we had available within the forecasted positive variance was the 210 in totality. And what we looked at is then that to date has not been spent. So the 25 million that was spoken about has not been utilized. And so that's now become this part of the total. The 96 million is embedded, and we can walk through that in more detail. We're in the budget conversations or even over lunch today. But essentially we were looking at it, and at the point in time when we were in the summer, from the June information, that's when the 25 was dedicated, has not been utilized yet, and so really this forms the part of everything being approved.
The 210 minus 25 is what's available for council to make investments if they decide to?
Well, in terms of everything that's available to make decisions on is on page 15 of the budget document. So council has the discretion on everything that's proposed, and everything on page 15 and previously was the direction of a prior council. And so as these are coming forward, these are all in addition to what was previously approved by the prior council for the 4 years. So the 4 years is already in place for 26, but any of those items are the discretion of council to move forward on. But the items that are specifically highlighted on page 15 are those new items that, again, were not in what was the 4-year plan 4 years ago.
Yeah, these were approved by last November. So they are based on not 210, they were based on what we knew at that point.
That's right.
So our budget documents will have 210, what is already committed, what is the balance left for council to invest?
So in terms of what we have in these documents, the 210 is available, but if you'll, not to take you into a budget document,
I didn't want to go into budget because...
But our variable pressure point or our variable change element comes out of the FSR. And so as some of these conversations, and again, depending on the timing of when things happen, those dollars from our positive variance would automatically roll into the FSR. So they'll come out of the FSR regardless, depending on timing. And that's why if things happen in the current year, it would be out of the variance. If they don't get spent, then it's into the FSR. So it's really those two combined.
Yeah, okay.
I just want to jump to Mr. Douglas for a follow-up for you, Councillor.
Just a bit of a clarification, Councillor Dhaliwal, to your question, that the 44,000 units was predicated on the Housing Accelerator Fund coming into place, not rezoning for housing.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's good clarification. My last question is, we have, this is again, I don't want to go into budget, but let's leave it for budget. Thank you. That's it for me, Mayor. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Over to you, Councillor Schmidt.
So with under the public safety, the applications to the fair entry program, we've seen a significant rise in the number of applications. I suppose there could be several reasons for this, whether more people want or more people are qualifying for that pass, or we're reaching more people, and we're looking at a goal of an increase perhaps from this year. So just curious if there is more information at hand as to why we're seeing that increase and the reasons for that increase, whether it's the city improving the way that we advertise that and make that accessible, or if it's because we just simply have more people that are needing to use that program.
Through the Mayor, Councillor Schmidt, that's a great question. To my knowledge, this is simply to do with the evolving and increasing needs that our city is presenting. If it turns out there's any further nuance than that, I'll make sure I follow up with you and all council. But based on everything I've heard, this is just the growth in the city and the growth in the circumstances that our citizens are facing.
Thank you. And then again, sorry, I should say through the chair, we are seeing a ridership with transit this year may not be on target to hit 2024. So again, through the chair, if there could be any sort of further information provided, if it's available, as to any sort of data or information that we're hearing from both riders and transit about the situation with ridership and what's being done to look at those numbers and the decrease.
Maybe I'll just chime in. We are expecting to exceed 2024 ridership on transit. We're trying to keep up with actually what we feel is some of the barriers is just the provision of service and making sure we have the service in the areas we need. But again, those are a mix of customers, whether they're on the fair entry program or regular customers. So again, some of the investments you'll see in the budget are to address some of those things and make sure that we have enough service for Calgarians.
And as a follow-up to that, are we looking at any targets, or do we have any information about reaching pre-COVID levels of ridership again?
We're really close to exceeding. We've had months where they're the highest ridership month that we've ever had, so we are seeing that come back. Certainly the trains and buses are quite busy. We're seeing more overload, so we're trying to balance that with our service provision, having the right number of employees and the right number of buses to do that. So we're kind of back in that growth trajectory we saw pre-COVID.
Thank you. And then final question, moving to housing. There is a breakdown of new housing units completed through the office conversion program, but is there more specific data either at hand or that could be provided about the types of housing starts, where they're located, and that type of information, as well as a breakdown across the city?
I expect we can provide that. I know there's a list of projects, for example, that are listed on the main housing page, and we could provide a breakdown of what those are, for example.
Yeah, that would be excellent. Thank you.
I think that's associated with the 1,115 new homes to come on.
Perfect.
So we can do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Over to you, Councillor Johnston.
Sorry, just back at the fair entry program, the programs and services are C-Train, internet, property tax, home services for seniors. Do you have a breakdown of which one of those programs are being requested?
I will gather what I can. What's important for us to keep in mind is that the fair entry process is strictly an eligibility process. So when people come in and apply for fair entry, they're applying to have access to any one of those programs. So then what happens in terms of the uptake on those programs depends completely on the individuals who are eligible for fair entry. So we'll track what we can and get that back to you and all council.
Thank you. Any other questions, Councillor?
No. That's everything. Thank you.
Over to you, Councillor Chabot.
You ready? All right, couple questions. So the positive, sorry, let me start with the capital budget. So we're not spending our entire capital budget annually. Roughly half of what our capital budget is. Does that sound about right?
We're spending about 90% of our capital budget.
90?
So
Wow.
we've improved significantly from the last few years ago. So if you remember previously, we were sitting around 50%.
Yes.
2024, we were over 90%. We're projecting to be 90% or just over again for 2025. And so that's
We're nowhere near that now, right? Right now, we're only sitting at about 50%.
So that would have
the report said.
That would have been at the end of Q3. We see a lot of bills come in the final quarter, and so we're expecting, as we're tracking all of our projects, to be in that 90%.
That's a great news story. Thank you. And the reason that I say that is because the implications of not spending money has other potential future implications, which leads me to my next question. So thank you for that. 90% is our target. In the past, of course, we haven't achieved that. We do show a pretty significant positive variance.
Sorry, I should say 90% is not our target. Our target's lower than 90%. We're exceeding our target in 2024 and 2025. We're planning to exceed as well.
Right, great work. And I mean that really. So I guess part of the challenge with the inflationary challenges that we face as a city on a lot of our projects, whilst we may have a certain amount that's budgeted for a project, it's not necessarily fixed that that's ultimately what it's going to cost. And so what I see in this budget is a very significant variance on our investment income. So I guess the question is, what happens with the money that's been put into the queue prior to it being spent? Do we invest it? Or?
So in terms of the dollars that we have, those are and form the basis of our investment portfolio. And so we look at those, we stratify them based on the information.
Okay, sweet.
I'll just remind everyone to be on mute if you're called into the bridge or on Teams.
So in terms of the dollars that we have, we invest them based on what we have for cash flow forecasts for what's needed in the very near term, midterm, and long term, and that forms the basis of how we invest it. The other part I would just mention is that for some of these capital programs, they are debt funded to a portion. And so what we've done in those cases is based on our work with the capital team is get an understanding of when we're going to need that debt. And as the information keeps adjusting, we adjust when we go to the market. So it's really twofold. One is around how we manage the dollars we currently have and investing them. And the second is managing our debt load as we go forward.
Okay. So from the perspective of any capital programs that are approved in a given year, if it's not actually built in that year, and if we ultimately have to push it out into the next year or beyond that, how do we accommodate for any inflationary increases? Could we use some of that positive variance and some of those investments to reinvest back into that inflationary increase on those capital programs that have not been realized in the year that they were approved?
So in terms of that issue of escalation, whether through inflation, direct overall or specific to a project, within the FSR we have a fair amount of funds that have been committed for cost escalation. So for exactly that purpose. And then as the projects keep getting evaluated and reviewed in terms of their cash flows, that's work that goes on in the background. So some of that risk is covered with the commitments that were dedicated inside the FSR.
And I'll just follow up. So the project teams are working on a per project basis, looking at escalation from a number of factors, whether it's cost of servicing goods, tariffs, and or just change in scope as conditions change on projects as we're going forward and we find out new things. The teams, number one, are always working to deal with that within the project budget that was approved. If they need the initial relief valve, council has approved an escalation fund that we've previously funded. We're asking for an additional amount in the 2026 budget, and we use that on an as-needed basis to deal with those in-flight projects that are already underway.
Okay, so that amount of money has been taken out prior to the submission or the, I guess, presentation to council as far as what the positive variance is. Any of those cost escalations have been taken out already before I see this projected positive variance?
So this positive variance is the transactional activity for the current year we're in. Inside the FSR is the result of positive variances that have been transferred into that reserve from prior years.
Yes.
And there are council directions that commit some of those dollars within the FSR for cost escalation from last year and the year before, which is targeted specifically for those issues.
I'm referring to on a go-forward basis. So for this fiscal year, whatever we don't spend, what are we going to draw down the FSR by, or what's going to be utilized in this current projected positive variance to mitigate any future cost escalations on a go-forward basis? Or is it just going to draw down the FSR?
So my eyes aren't catching anything on page 15 of the adjustments, but
I believe, just going off the top of my head, I believe we're asking for $15 million additional to the capital escalation fund. I'll have to confirm that number again. That's in the budget documents and not in the report that's in front of you. And that's how we're addressing those specific project escalations on a go-forward basis for projects that are in flight right now. Any other questions we could get into during the budget discussion next week?
Right.
just to confirm, my eyes didn't read that fast. It is capital cost escalations for 15.
15, okay.
Look at that.
Okay, I'll take you to page 16. So council, as we know, the MGA limits us, although not quite so limiting anymore now that we have the city charter, I guess, option to exceed our maximum allowable as limited under the MGA, which is 2 times gross revenue and 0.3 times or 30% for debt servicing, 0.3. So that's MGA limit, 2 times gross revenue, right? And 30% for debt servicing. Council imposed a further limitation on our debt limit, right?
That's correct.
At what, 80%?
Total debt borrowing must be less than 1.6 times revenue. Total debt service shall not exceed 0.28 times revenue.
Okay, well, those two numbers actually don't work, don't match. The 80% of the debt limit, which is what that is, 20% less than a maximum allowable, is 1.6. But 20% less of our maximum allowable debt servicing is not 0.28. That should be 0.24 if we're applying the same percentage to debt servicing versus total debt.
We'll have to, we're thinking of calling, it might be ringing.
Mr. Chabot, could I call on you to move the item? I didn't realize we no longer have timers when the item hasn't been moved at committee. So I just want to be mindful
But at committee, we can ask as many questions as we want, so timers really don't apply here.
You may, but I've tried to give you latitude in areas that you've been engaging in somewhat into debate.
It's a question of clarification, because this is wrong. This number is wrong.
So I'll take that away.
But happy to move the item.
But from the perspective of the 0.28, 0.4, I don't think based on our gaps, we have anything at risk from a debt perspective, and I'll have to take away because the 2 point,
But it's not
sorry, the
debt.
0.2.
I'm sorry to interrupt. It's not the debt, the total debt that I'm concerned about. It's the debt servicing number. The debt servicing, if we're applying 80% of the maximum allowable under the MGA, 80% of two times is 1.6. 100% agree with that number. But 80% of 0.3 is not 0.28. It's 0.24. That's the number that I'm questioning. As to all the documents that we have, all say 0.28, but that's not the same 80% limitation that council self-imposed limitation on our maximum allowable, whether that's total debt or debt servicing. So if we're going to apply the same principle to both debt and debt servicing, that number should be 0.24, because what it is currently is 0.933.
So if I could, I'll take this away and I'll see how we derived the 0.28, and what was that? And if it, I'll reply back to all of council as to its correctness and if we need an adjustment going forward.
Thank you. Listen, my microphone light's not on, but my microphone's still on. That's awesome. No further questions. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Chabot, actually a really good catch. Yep. Going over to Councillor Kelly.
Through the chair to CEO Duckworth, I just wanted to say thank you for the report. I admit when I first saw this that I was like, what is this? This is the first time that we've seen something like this. This is an excellent way for us to get a good overview of how things are going in the city. I appreciate it, and I'm kind of conscious of the fact that a lot of members of the public would appreciate some in-depth review of this as well. Apologies if I missed this before, but is there any planned communication on this document going out?
My understanding is yes, so we do use social media. It's also available on our website. I can't comment exactly what it is, but I know the team has a plan.
Oh, that's perfect.
Get this out. Yep.
Yep, for the purposes today, that's all good. Just turning to page 10 in attachment process, or during the 4-year budget setting?
So it's a little bit of a combination of both. So what we're doing, just so you know, the quarterly report, we're enhancing it. And so if you move into 2026, when this council sets their priorities, we'll have very targeted, when we respond back, every quarter you'll see how we're moving the needle on all of your priorities. We're also going to be working with you, council, to determine what the priorities, what outcomes are you looking to achieve, and what performance metrics do you think are important for that we monitor. So you'll have an opportunity to do that when you create your priorities next year. This is a combination coming from our service plans and budgets and what we feel as administration are important. I wouldn't say this table was necessarily adopted.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that clarification. Staying on the same page, through the chair to GM Morgan, I normally wouldn't ask this question, but I know your previous roles, you'll probably have this top of mind. Trips that arrive within a specified period, i.e. bus on-time performance, can you remind me what that specified period is?
Usually the one we use is 0 to 5 minutes. So we don't like anything to be early. That's as if you miss the bus, but really target that 0 to 5 minutes as our on-time performance.
Excellent. And I just note on that particular item, it appears as though we're seeing it trend down. Any sort of comment on that about why that might be? And I might be getting a little bit close to a question I think that Councillor Schmidt might have asked earlier.
Sure. It really is the busyness of the transit system, but also the busyness of the city, congestion overall. And that is driving some of that on-time performance, lots of congestion in the downtown, some of the success of our construction programs, taking up road capacity and slowing things down. So we're looking not only at the performance of the buses, but also we need to make some schedule adjustments to bring us back on time. So that requires resources as well. But I would say that's some of the drivers is the number of stops we have to make, as well as the congestion in the system.
I'm sure we'll have more conversation about this come budget, but thank you, I appreciate that. Staying on the same page, I just wanted to head down, and I've kind of lost reading. Oh, there we go. Second last one on there, cumulative number of repaired potholes. I'll talk a little bit more on the next one I want to refer to. I really appreciate sort of forecast. I'm wondering what the forecast is here. Obviously, we're heading into winter. We were trending up between the 2 previous years of 33,000 and almost 38,000. We're currently sitting at 27. I'm just curious with Q4 where we think our forecast is going to end at.
Great question. I don't have the exact number, but some of the documents I've seen, it's around the 30,000. We are seeing kind of a leveling out. It was quite a problem last year. That's what drove some of the investment that council made in paving. So we are seeing it leveling out and heading in the right direction, but we have more work to do.
I'm glad that you mentioned that right at the end there, because that was going to be my follow-up question. Is less potholes being paved a good thing or a bad thing? So thank you, I appreciate that. Skipping down to the capital budget, which I think is page 15. Am I correct on that? Nope. Page 14. Just sort of curious here in terms of when we talk about year-end forecast about the percentages, this is not of the overall budget for these particular capital items. This is just for what we plan to spend in the year and the percentage that we forecast we will have spent. Is that correct?
So this would be the 2025 budget on the left-hand side, where we actually sit at the end of Q3 as the second column, and then that right year-end forecast is by department where we're projecting to be at the end of the year, and that's where we're currently projecting to be 91% at the end of the year, and that's comprised of various approaches. I know in the infrastructure services department, we're going through project by project and looking at each of them and compiling where do we believe we'll be at by the end of the year. Obviously, that's always weather dependent as well with a lot of our outdoor projects. Right now, we're having a fantastic fall, so we're able to get out and do more work. And so that's positive. So there's a number of small things that come into take on that.
Cool. That confirms what I thought. I just wanted to clarify. So my actual question on this particular page is I'm wondering if we can speak to a couple of the items that are significantly or forecast to be significantly under budget and what the rationale is there.
So happy to, as you look at the large capital drivers, if we think about infrastructure services with the large amount at 91%, operational services.
Any of the 90s I'm not worried about. It's more the ones that are significantly under.
Yeah, so I was just going to say on those large capital dollars, you'll see really good performance. It's those smaller ones sometimes where maybe we're into the hundreds of thousands of dollars for a capital project, and instead of needing that entire budget, they're going to spend a smaller percentage of it. So on our large capital projects across the departments, I think we're doing really well. It's some of those smaller ones that are much more impacted by specific projects.
So maybe just to delve into that a little bit and call them out specifically, planning and development services only at 59% to, basically what I'm getting at here is it a good thing that we are that significantly underspent, or is it a bad thing?
I would look at the entire capital budget and say that across the whole for $2.6 billion, we compare ourselves to other cities in Canada, and we are probably one of the highest performing in our delivery of our capital program at 90%. As you heard from Councillor Chabot, we used to be in the 50%, and we have done a complete team effort across the entire city to bump that number up, and being very transparent in the details here. So you can see there's always some gives and some takes, but overall at 90%, we're really knocking it out of the park.
No, and I appreciate that. And as a project manager, 91% overall is, I'll echo Councillor Chabot, like that's absolutely fantastic. But again, with a project management background, I'm always curious about the ones that are significantly underspent as to either what we got wrong, which could be a positive thing or a negative thing. Maybe I'll leave it there, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Over to Councillor Atkinson.
Mayor Farkas, if we could, just could.
Sorry for the interruption. We just have a follow-up answer for Councillor Chabot.
Oh, fantastic.
Thank you. So to the answer, or sorry, to the question on the percentage of the debt servicing. So previously to the city charter, we were under debt regulation 255/2000, which prescribes the debt limit for the city, the debt servicing limit for the city of Calgary is 0.35 times operating revenue. So then 20% of that number is 0.28.
Thank you, Councillor Atkinson.
Page 10 of the report. I'm just wondering, overall, can you speak to how the targets are set in the right-hand column, just across the various KPIs?
So the targets are set, I'll look to my colleagues as well, in various plans and strategies that we have here at the city. Many of these targets were set at the beginning of the previous council's four-year budget. As I mentioned earlier, we'll be doing the same thing with you next year. I believe one, for example, the one on housing, a couple on the housing were set through our applications for funding with the federal government. And I know maybe Mr. Dalglish would like to add on to that.
An example would be the 3,000 per year of non-market homes, which is comes straight out of Council's Home is Here strategy.
And the ones that have no targets set, any rationale for why those ones are either not applicable, like, say transit ridership or percentage of sidewalks and pathways in good or very good condition, like compared to, say, roadways, which is given a target? Is there a reason for not applicable on some of those?
It's probably instant specific. If I think about where we were 4 years ago on the transit ridership, we were a bit in turmoil with the transit service and the recovery from COVID. So we're probably reluctant at that point until things settled out. I think you'll see as we develop the 4-year plans, having a much more robust discussion with council on what we call that customer level of service, how the value chain works towards providing that to citizens. So I think that's one of the things we want to push on to make sure we can have that dialogue with you and make sure that lines up with your expectations for the community and that we cost that appropriately.
Perfect, thank you, that's great. On the transit side of things, I know we've been sort of digging in on that, but just to clarify, when we're talking about ridership levels, that is not based on a per population. It's not taking into account growth, both in terms of population or growth outwardly of the city, and transit trying to deal with those complications being added to the system.
Yeah, we look at a whole bunch of different metrics. So we look at the supply of service, that might be the service hours per capita. We look at the rides per capita. We also look at what we call the mode split. That's how many people are taking transit in comparison to other modes. So we do look at the universe of metrics and try to create a service that can drive those in the community and get that variance in transit ridership. So we do have all those metrics, only we have to choose a couple that we report to council.
Councillor Atkinson, if I can just add a little bit around performance measures. So the previous council's plan had over 320 measures in them. It's difficult to report on 320 measures. So this is a compilation of what administration feels are the key measures. We're going to be working with you, council, as I mentioned, next year to identify your priorities, the outcomes you want to achieve, and what metrics are important to you in the community, including targets. I've also made a change a few months back. The performance team used to be in Mr. Tucker's department. We've realigned those people into the Chief Administrator's office. So you'll look at, when you look at the budget document with the Chief Administrator's office, staffing levels have gone up simply because we've moved staff from one area to another. I believe I need to have a close line of sight, as well as the executive leadership team, on our performance measures and how we're performing. The other team that we moved to my office is the risk team. So our enterprise risk team now reports within the Chief Administrator's office, so that I myself and my team can make evidence-based decisions based on risk. So I just thought I would add that color as well.
That's great, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Over to Councillor Juarez.
Thanks. Can we go back to page 14? I'm just kind of, I'm wondering why community services is predicted to do 101% spend.
Took some of the money from another, no, I'm just kidding.
Oh boy.
Sorry, I'm just pulling that up. Councillor Juarez, so 101% on community services. Typically that has a lot of our partner work going through it, and so capital projects that we're granting to partnerships, we're tracking their performance on those, and it looks like it's spent well. We have recently changed our process and policy as well, so that we can overspend in a single year and pull money from the next year if required. So not worried about that overspend of 1%.
So if that's what you're doing, how will that be reflected in future budgets for council to keep track of what year you're actually pulling funding from?
That would be, we'll help spend that. It's a multi-year program. So say we have a program that covers 2 years. The council's approved the budget. We may have overspent a touch in the first year. The cash flow will just be lower in the second year.
But how will that be reported for council to understand, to make sure that it's
clear? It would be a lower spend in the second year because the total dollar value of the project would be the same.
Okay, yeah, I'm curious. I'll have to take this offline because I'm curious on what projects we're going to anticipate seeing overspends and underspends on.
Happy to talk to you about that offline. We don't have a lot of those overspends, really trying to get that number up. That's why I think CFO would be smiling right now. That's not a big challenge we have right now.
Awesome, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other lights? None. Seeing none, over to Councillor Chabot to close on the recommendation.
Yeah, no, happy to close on these recommendations. Thank you for this report. It's really good. My apologies on the 0.3 versus 0.35. I should have known that it was correct because I actually was part of the approvals back in the day when it was first introduced. There's one thing in here that I thought could probably warrant some additional changes to it, and it's where it's reported about the notices of motion. And while it's great as far as being part of the report, as far as the things that have happened in the past from a reference perspective, it doesn't say which ones are completed. And I know that there's a lot of them that are on this list that have already now been completed and approved by council. It would be probably nice to know, even though there's a specific date on when it's going to be reported back, some of them have been reported and voted on. And so it would be nice to see that those are now concluded so we know what is still in the queue. But anyways, happy to close on this recommendation and hope committee can support it. Closed.
Thank you, Councillor. Madam Clerk, let's please engage the e-vote.
Councillor Chabot, your vote, please. Thank you. Councillor Pontesopoulos, thank you. Councillor Johnston, your vote, please.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Farkas, all the votes are in.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Please display the results. And that motion has carried unanimously, 14-0. So having completed 7.2, we can move through the agenda where briefings are not an item open for debate. Committee, I believe we've earned our adjournment. May I please have a mover to adjourn? Councillor Kelly has moved to adjourn. Any opposed? Or rather, all in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carried. We are adjourned.